Yo, what's good everybody? Hope y'all doing well. So this past weekend, Don Toliver dropped his album Hardstone Psycho, and in this video I'm going to be showing y'all how you can make a beat similar to the style of that album. And I think that's enough said, so let's just jump right into it. So I started this beat by getting a sample from Splice, and it sounds something like this. So I dropped that sample into the arrangement, and I'll just go ahead and redo the time stretching and just show y'all how I changed it. So the first thing I did is I went to the project tempo and I made it 118, which was the tempo of the sample on Splice. And going back to the playlist, you can see the sample is exactly 8 measures. So I double clicked on it to open up the audio menu, and I changed the mode to stretch. Then I turned the tempo up to 157, and I pitched it down by 1 right here. And then I went up to the pitch settings here and I changed the range to 12, and I put it all the way to the right. So I'm basically just pitching it up by 1 octave. You could also do this by going to the same pitch knob here, and instead of doing minus 100 cents, you could do plus 1100. So after manipulating it, this is what the sample sounds like. And for effects on that, I just put on an EQ to clean up some of the unwanted frequencies. And going back to the arrangement that has everything else, I have the version of the loop that I just showed y'all, and then I also have a pitch down version of it. So it's basically just the same thing as this, except I didn't put the pitch up by 12. And so for the intro, I had the lower pitched loop playing along with this sub bass pattern. The sound I'm using is kind of a standard looking sub bass. And to give it a little bit more body and make it sound fuller, I put some destructor on it, and I put a little bit of flanges on it too. So the sub bass pattern sounds something like this by itself. So going into the note selection a little bit, so the loop originally had a key of D minor, which was given by Splice. I pitched it down by 1/2 step, so that just changes the key from D minor to C sharp minor. And just to build some tension, I put in this D note after the C sharp. This isn't actually in the C sharp minor scale, but it just fit with the sample, and it gave the whole beat a darker feel to it. And putting this sub bass in context with the intro loop, it sounds something like this. The intro is pretty simple, it's just those 2 layers. Now moving on to these couple melodies right here. Similar to the sub bass, these are also pretty simple. So for my first melody sound, I got this Arctic wind pad from Serum, and I believe it comes from the default library. And in here, I put down a super simple pattern. So it's using that same pattern of the root note of C sharp, and then I just put down the 5th note of the scale. If you don't know music theory, it's just 7 half steps up from the original root note. Just count it up on the piano, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I duplicated that again and cut it a little bit short. And at the end of the 4th and 8th measure, where the note switch up is, I put down a variation of this original coupling right here. So moving this down an octave, you can see the only difference is that I'm moving this G sharp up to an A, or moving the 5th note up to the 6th note in the scale. Similar to the C sharp and D, I'm just shifting this up 1 to create some tension and make it sound darker. Once I had this, I just took that C sharp and moved it up an octave and just copied it for the second half. And by itself, this is what the pad sounds like. So now moving on to my next melody sound, which is the brass, and this is a brass one shot from my resonance multi-kit. And I pretty much just did the same thing that I did with the sub bass. I just laid down a few bass notes, and then I just threw in that little switch up with the half step up at the end. And now we pretty much have our finished melodies for the entirety of the beat. For the hook section of the beat, this is what the melodics sound like. So now moving on to our drum sounds. Similar to the brass sound, all of these drum sounds are in the Resonance multi-kit. The link to that will be in the description. So the first thing I put down was a clap, and I just put it down on the 3rd beat of every measure. Then I got a hi-hat, and I put down this pattern right here. I think the rolls are primarily using the 1/3 step snap to grid, and you can probably see by looking at it that it doesn't look like a typical 2-step. I tried to keep these notes kind of spaced out and do something a little different from that 2-step bounce. Moving on to the next drum sound, I have this perc, which I put down kind of like a snare on the 2nd and 6th measures. And then I placed down this open hat, which hit on the 4th beat on the 4th and 8th measure, and these kind of complement that switch up that happens with the bass notes. So now moving on to the first 808 pattern. Both of the 808 patterns are pretty simple. Just looking at this, it looks super similar to the sub bass, and that's just because it follows the same convention of the root note and then just putting it up a half step to switch it up. So now moving on to the second 808 pattern. The first 808 was a harder hitting 808. This one resonates for a little bit longer, and I also have these little slides here at the bottom to switch it up. And so this is what it sounds like by itself. Since this 808 doesn't hit as hard, I put down a kick pattern to go with it. Overall, it just helps it stand out a little more. That's pretty much all the components of the beat. We just have our original loop. We manipulated a little bit and then threw down a few melodic layers, rounded it out with the drums, and then for the arrangement, I just kind of went through with an intro, hook, verse, bridge, hook, and then verse arrangement. All right, so that's gonna do it for this video. Hope y'all found it pretty helpful and enjoyed it. I appreciate all the support y'all been giving me, and that's gonna do it for me, so I'll see you on the next video.
Roll up, Tess. 215 in the back of the old school lot, you know it ain't dumb enough. Shawty on the 15 flow in the pain with a pussy, yeah, finna come up. Knocked it down on the bed and caught that head, she one head one. A big old body today, she me on yeah, boy, you better go keep up. Got my Glocky clip to the hip, just like a goddamn beeper. Shawty all over my face and shit, I don't know where I meet you. Tryna play tough guy and shit, she know I come and see you. They gon' try to take it all, try to put some fear. They trip to start, whatever you get. It's hot, it smell like a break. It's live, it sound like a hit. That 5% of the rate, I ain't finna get you shit. My baby, she wants some more, but I ain't finna get you shit. My 9mm, that's my damn security. Hardstone president, you more like Hillary. I paint the picture vividly, she love my imagery.